Hello everyone. Thank you for participating to this new LinkedIn Live session together, organized commonly by Source of Asia and our strategic partner Index Asia. We are launching these types of episode to help you size the opportunities and raise also your attention on hot topics in Southeast Asia. Moreover, do not hesitate to download our last publication, Doing in Business in Vietnam 2023-2024. It will give you interesting testimonials and how to do business in Vietnam regarding regulatory environment and also sectors. As we last time we've talked together about the HR market, let's dive deeper for this LinkedIn Live session into the M&A market in Southeast Asia. For that episode, I'm very glad to introduce you Julien Curté, partner at Index Asia Vietnam. So he's an expert on this zone and will help us to better understand the market and the best strategy to operate M&A operation in Vietnam. Please, Julien, I'm very happy to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So let's begin maybe with the outlook 2023 regarding M&A market in Southeast Asia. It has to be noted that M&A activities in Southeast Asia has declined since peaking in 2021. What is important to say is that in 2021, 2022, we witnessed that M&A transactions have skyrocketed in Southeast Asia. For instance, in ASEAN 2022, total deals value was being close to 99 billion US dollar, which was a record for this region. I can also give you the figures for Vietnam. So 2022 for Vietnam remains the most prosperous years in the M&A market in the context of post-COVID situations. So part of these opportunities come from ASEAN strategic geographic location, for sure. Southeast Asia, are close to dynamic regions regarding M&A. We have India, we have Japan, and also we have Oceania with Australia. So as you know, ASEAN is also pursuing cross-border agreements to become a major hub in the future. We can observe for years now that some countries in Southeast Asia are more integrated than others in M&A deals, such as Singapore, for instance. In 2019, the M&A market they had a number of 54 deals worth a total nearly 11 billion US dollar, which is important. And also we can mention the countries of Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam that are also known as sweet spots, as PwC explained in their M&A Outlook 2023, for investing in this region. So, Julien, how do you identify this region as a potential one for the future M&A market? And how can you maybe explain also the little drop of the Southeast Asia deals in 2023?
Yeah, I don't expect the drop to be long term, right? Because I feel when you look at the M&A, I think you really look at how big the market is and what is this potential for the market. And I think Southeast Asia and Vietnam are, among the most dynamic markets in the world at the moment. And it's just, I think we're reaching a scale at which, there is bigger and bigger companies in those regions, which makes it so that large global institutional players are getting more and more attention to the region. And so because of this, I think the market will grow and grow, at least on the mid to long-term view. The short term, right? It's a surprise to anybody, right? There's a slowdown globally, and this slowdown has impacted the region. This slowdown has also increased a lot the financing cost. And so the cost for acquisition has been much higher than in the past. And so that's why we're seeing a small drop in the activity this year. But I see it also as an opportunity, right, for the M&A market, in the sense that companies locally, which rely or have been relying mainly on organic growth, will need to look more and more at external growth in order to be different and to grow faster than their competition.
Okay, very interesting. And also we can see that the market for M&A in Southeast Asia is more and more mature as the deal value are increasing while maybe the quantity are decreasing. So it shows us also the restructuration of the M&A market in Southeast Asia, which is very promising for the future. If we go more into detail about the main sectors in M&A for Southeast Asia, we notice two very active sectors in 2023 in automotive and food and beverage. So, for instance, we notice that for automotive, we have the Vietnam-based VinFast Auto, who merged with Black Spade acquisition for 23 billion US dollar, which is one of a bigger amount of deals this year. Maybe, Julien, what do you identify as top sectors to invest in Vietnam, but also in Southeast Asia, with your experience in Index Asia?
No, thanks. I think, when looking at M&A and when trying to anticipate what will be the big M&A sectors, I think it's always good to come back to the fundamentals of the market, right? And when you look at the trends of the market in Southeast Asia, I think we can really find, or we have identified really four that are key. I think the number one is you have an affordable but still of quality workforce that helps for export, especially in a global trend where people, European and Western economies are trying to decentralize away from a single production hub, which is China. So that's one trend. Another trend, which is really the growing middle class, which start to spend more and more, and which will create companies in the consumer sector, which will be bigger and bigger. Another key specificity of this market is also the fact that it's really a digital native and digitally driven population. And so digital adoption and use is among the biggest in the world. And so with this, we can see a lot of M&A, I think, to expect in the sectors related to digital. And I think lastly, and due to the growth of the market, we still see a kind of a lack of infrastructure to support this growth in the market. And so we're seeing, I think we will see more and more infrastructure deals and infrastructure in M&A in those markets, right? And I think for each of those trends to continue to grow, etc., I think M&A will be a key strategy driver and a key way for big companies and those sectors to grow. And I think we've seen this a bit in the past, right? As you mentioned, regarding the exportation and the industrial, there have been quite some investment into VinFast, like on the battery making by Got Iron, for example, or microchip industry. With the rise of AI, you see more and more investment, and so there is huge companies, especially from South Korea and Taiwan, investing in the market. Regarding consumer, recently we've seen quite a lot of deals in the healthcare, with Thomson Medical acquiring a big hospital in Vietnam, or KKR, the famous asset manager from the US, investing in Saigon Medical Group. But I think we're going to see the same in other consumer-related sectors, such as financial services, consumer per se with Masan.
Yeah.
On the digital front, I think M&A investment in digital infrastructure, like a data center or online media, online content, but also e-commerce and logistic, we'll see a big spur in M&A. And at the end, as I said, right, the lack of infrastructure in the country will drive a lot, in my view, continued growth and continued investment in real estate, as we saw in the past with big investment into Novaland or Vinhomes, as well as in energy, where Vietnam is actually having quite some bold moves into their transition towards renewable energy. And so we can expect a lot there.
Yeah, sure. Very interesting. I think you managed to resume all the top investing sectors in Southeast Asia, in particular in Vietnam. Talking about the foreign investor, I think we can take some time also to identify the FDIs in Vietnam and who are the foreign investors in Vietnam. So we can, I think, clearly see in what you say that we have also the Asia region, who is very dominated into this country. So we think about Singapore, Japan, South Korea, that are, of course, the main investors in Vietnam. What about Europe? What about Europe's coming to Vietnam, coming to Southeast Asia? And I was thinking about another trend. Can we see a Vietnamese company investing in Vietnam for the domestic market also?
Yeah, so I see two questions. So regarding Europe and Europe investing in Vietnam and doing M&A, I think Europe we've always been a bit more risk averse than other countries, and so usually we regionally we come really after first the people around in the region. So as you said, right, Japan, Korea, Singapore, and China, and after our friends from the US. And we are since I've seen and we've seen a lot of M&A transaction from the US. I think we can expect more and more European transaction in the future. I think a few landmark deals done by European companies and European countries actually shows that it's going in this direction. And I think here we can take the example of Lego, the Danish company, who just committed to invest more than 1 billion USD in their new factory in Vietnam, which is a big commitment and a big show that I think more and more European investors will come into this country, either directly investing or through M&A. I think to your second point on local domestic M&A, I think there has been in the past a lot of those, right? However, it's much less transparent. It's much more smaller value, and so it makes much less the headlines. But I think it's still happening. You still have a bit of activity in local M&A. I think one of the key reasons why it's not growing or it does not have such high value yet, I think is the fact that local companies have trouble financing their deals. It's very hard for a company to go to a bank and to ask for a loan to do acquisition. And so as such, the companies can only acquire on their own balance sheet, which makes it difficult to do very large transactions.
Okay.
Noting this, however, we've seen bigger conglomerates raising funds from outside. And so Novaland was one, and who did the M&A spur over the past 2 years. I think the investment as well that was announced a few weeks ago about Bain Capital investing in Masan gives actually those companies a lot of money and a lot of dollars to actually conduct their own M&A activity in Vietnam.
Thank you very much. I think we have a lot of insights from you today. That's why also we wanted to share with you that Source of Asia and Indexasia are partnering in Vietnam for M&A operation and transaction. We know that it might be complex also to organize M&A operation in this country. So that is why we also want to share with you today tips and strategies on how to successfully operate an M&A transactions on the ground in Vietnam. So maybe, Julien, for the second part of this live session, can you share with us the advantages, of course, to launch a cross-border M&A operation, but also the challenges you can, I think, witness when you have foreign investors coming to Vietnam to invest?
No, yeah, I agree. I think M&A, whether it's cross-border or not, is always a bit tough. And so that's always good to start with the why. And I think, in my view, you can, or a company can win a lot of years to accelerate. It's a good way to accelerate versus building from scratch. And you get talent and you get, local advance to actually accelerate more. I think part of our research, and we think that a company doing M&A successfully can win 3 to 5 years over any other company that either don't do M&A well or try to start from scratch, whether it's for actually attacking the local market and kind of more of a market entry strategy, or for using Vietnam or other markets in the region as a production center or production hub for the company elsewhere and globally. And so, as I said, it's tough, right? And on top of the usual difficulties and obstacles of running M&A locally, I think what needs especially to be carefully thought through in Vietnam, I think is one, the culture from Europe and the US is very different. And this can lead to a lot of misunderstanding and potential error in gaps in expectation. I'm thinking, I have an example here. The timeline, for example, in Europe for doing an M&A deal is more 6 to 9 months. I think in Vietnam, given the local people are a bit less used to M&A, plus the fact that it's a different way of approaching a deal, I think it can last more 12 to 18 months. So people need to be a bit more patient. I think the second point, which is a challenge, but that needs to be known from potential buyers, is the transparency in those markets is quite low. And there's a big propensity of potential sellers to conceal facts around their company's compliance, the company's liability, the company's debt, the company reporting, etc., with a lot of company actually still practicing double accounting, and so having two accounting books. So it's not, it's another challenge that's quite inherent to this market. I think last point, and something to keep in mind, is the sellers are very optimistic usually, and their negotiation strategy is always to give a very high valuation number, at least at the beginning. It does not mean that they will not change, but it looks like the gap will never be able to close. And actually, in reality, it's not the case, but it requires a lot of time, as I said a bit earlier, and a lot of discussion in order to build the trust and to find a deal that is fair for both parties.
Yeah.
So that's why, in my view, I think getting a strong understanding of the local culture, but also having, let's say, boots on the ground and people that are, used to and versed to manage those face-to-face interactions with the local party is actually very important to make sure that the M&A strategy is successful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Julien. I completely agree with you. I think what is important is to have a local arm on the ground, on site, to operate with you as foreign investors in Vietnam. For instance, we had this customer last year who didn't know if he wanted to close his factory or to resell to a new acquirer. So what is important to see on that kind of situation is that he was not on site. He didn't know how the factory was going on. So Sophasia teams might be able to come, audit the factory, visualize the stocks, and then advise for the first divestiture investment part. And also Index Asia can, for instance, value the factory and give a number also to find after potential acquirers. That is why we are partnering together. That is why we can also help you as local entities, local arm in Vietnam. We have the market knowledge, we have the network, and we also have the experience of this kind of situations, which might be complex and challenging. So please do not hesitate to contact us, Sophasia and Index Asia, for more information about M&A operation on the ground in Vietnam, but also in Southeast Asia. We will be very glad to help. And we wish you a great day. Thank you so much, Julien, for having us and being with us today. It's a pleasure, and let's see us next time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.